Christ is risen. We have to say that response today with a lot of gusto. This is the final Sunday in saying Christ is risen. So make sure today as it's proclaimed that you respond with a lot of fervor as we look towards the ascension this coming Thursday. I was very tempted, dear ones, to delay my series, this third and final talk on the priesthood today, because that gospel lesson is just so rich. There's so much within today's gospel, the healing of this blind man, that we could talk about, and we will talk about some of those things in the coming weeks, especially this kind of shocking scene at the end where the Jewish leaders declare to this man who has just been healed, "You were born in utter sin," and they cast him out of the temple. And being cast out of the temple, Christ hears about it and confronts the man. Do you see the irony of this situation? The one who is supposed to be worshipped in the temple has to meet the man who is cast out of the temple to confront him. There's so much that we could talk about, but I'm going to keep to my promise, and today we'll do the third and final talk in our series in the priesthood. After all, I think we read that gospel again next year. That was a joke. And the year after that, and the year after that. There will be plenty of opportunities for it. So we'll end our series on the priesthood, again using St. John Chrysostom's work, sprinkled in with some of my own thoughts. And so I read the final third of St. John Chrysostom's on the priesthood. And St. John Chrysostom speaks again a great deal. He continues on with what we talked about last week with the priest as a homilist. And he talks about how the priest endures dangers in every single direction as a homilist. He has to preach tough homilies, correcting his people while convincing them that he's doing so out of love. People become so offended so quickly, and the priest has to make sure that he is aware of that, but he can't avoid the words that may actually hurt people, because sometimes those words are absolutely necessary. He can't allow people to wallow in their sins without actually correcting them when he sees those sins. The priest has to avoid all sorts of heresies. We talked about this a little bit last week. So much so that when he preaches against a heresy on one side, he has to make sure that his people don't go too far to the other side. There needs to be balance in all things, and that balance in homilies is especially difficult to keep. St. John Chrysostom is very practical in this. He says the homilist must not be boring. I've been told that sometimes I'm guilty of this, mainly from my wife, but she's the best critic there is. He says the homilist must not put the people to sleep with his homily. But at the same time, he says, in the rare case that you have a priest who actually gives good homilies, he says this too is a danger, because the quality can't always be so high. And so while people come to expect a high quality of homilies from this priest, when he gives one that's not to the same caliber and degree, the people will quickly complain. And he says he has to be quick. The priest must be quick to meet any expressions of disagreements from his homilies, offenses, or even disappointments that he gave a homily that was not quite as good as the previous weeks. St. John Chrysostom then gives a section in which he compares the priest to monks and hermits. This is a really fascinating section in which he argues that the purity that we find in the ascetics out in caves deep in the desert must be matched by the priest. And in fact, the priest must be more pure than the ascetics found in the caves. The ascetics, he argues, avoid many snares. At the time, St. John Chrysostom himself was a hermit. And so he said, I don't have to worry about a lot of things that the priest in the world has to deal with. I don't have to deal with people who might make me angry or situations that might bring me depression. I don't need to worry about any of this because I'm in a cave. There's walls surrounding me. There's darkness. There's light during the day. There's me and God, and I pray. And all of the issues that come with people, I don't have to deal with. But the priest must be ready. The priest must be ready to meet every single attack that comes in their varied forms and numbers. being ready to keep the purity of those ascetics who live out in the desert, but be willing to put up with the attacks that the ascetics themselves don't have to deal with. He says the priest must be an inexhaustible warrior, and he must see himself as the general of an army that he's constantly trying to keep in shape, and that it's very easy for this general, the priest, to become wearied by this task, and that the enemy actively awaits to see any opening, every single opportunity in the priest's weariness to attack him. The priest must keep his guard up, even more so than the ascetic in the desert. St. John Chrysostom then concludes by talking about the great glory of the priesthood. He's talking about it in the sense of why he was glad to avoid it, that he could not match this glory. Of course, he was eventually ordained not just to the diaconate and priesthood, but became one of the greatest bishops of the church. He says that he knew a man, it's very possible this was St. John Chrysostom himself, who witnessed inside of the altar the priest surrounded by the host of angelic bodies and powers, and that the priest concelebrates with these angelic powers, and therefore he must inwardly reflect their lives. He must have the virtues of the angels in order to worthily serve with them. With all of this and everything we've said in the past few weeks, we understand that it is not the Christian's duty, but rather the Christian's honor to be able to greatly love and adore the priesthood. This is so great that in traditional Orthodox countries and in monasteries you see expressions that may not be very common for us, but really ought to be the norm. In Greece, it's said that if the priest does the rare thing of clipping or trimming his beard and his hair, if he does this, it is natural for the people to collect the trimmings, because this is off of the body of the priest who stands at the altar and offers the unbloody sacrifice. So full of grace is this, that those clippings are kept and they're buried with the priest. They're not to be thrown away. I had somebody here in this parish tell me that in a monastery in America, she witnessed at a women's monastery that when the priest would sit with the people to eat, they would bring out not just the finest china and the finest glasses, but she was very surprised that when she was helping the nuns clean up after the meal, she went to grab the leftovers from the priest and she went to grab the glass of water, and one of the nuns came up and said, No. We don't throw this water out like the water from everybody else. So what do you do with it? She said, you never pour. This is from the priest. You don't pour it down the drain. This is only fit for the flowers in the garden. We'll put it there. But don't toss this water out like in a drain like everybody else. This is how much the nuns honor the priesthood. There's a famous quote from St. John Chrysostom. Everyone thinks that it's in this book, on the 6 books in the priesthood, but there's really no direct quote that says this, though this is very much in line with his thinking there. If he says it somewhere else, I couldn't find it, but he's often quoted, St. John Chrysostom is often quoted as saying that if you were to be walking through the marketplace and you saw 2 beings walking together, one a priest and one an angel, because of the great glory of the priesthood and the fact that only through his hands are the bread and the wine of the offering transformed into the body and blood of Christ, the Christian is right to go greet the priest first and get his blessing, and then the angel. First the priest and then the angel. For Orthodox Christians, what this means is that the blessing of the priest is coveted and it's honored greatly. I had a sibling growing up who asked my mom once, what do teachers do at the end of the day? We go to school, 2nd, 3rd grade. We're done for the day. We go home. Maybe there's a little bit of homework, but then we have a free day and we watch TV and such. What do the teachers do? And my mom said, well, the teachers continue to work. They grade papers. They have to correct tests. They have to plan the lessons for the next day. The teachers are working, even when they get home. And so this sister of mine never left school again without waiting around until the teacher was available and thanking the teacher before going home. She would stand at the classroom and wait for everyone to leave, and if the teacher was in their conversation, just stand and wait, and then say thank you, and then leave. Christians are the same. When they first see the priest, they go and get a blessing. And when they depart, they go and get a blessing. Why? Because this is Christ's priesthood. It's Christ's priesthood flowing through the priest. To honor the priest is to honor Christ. To get the priest's blessing is to get Christ's blessing. And we Christians covet that. As I said at the very beginning of the series, I say none of this for my account. I have to deal with the fact that I dishonor the priesthood in my life. And as I've told you, there are very few things that I'm not too anxious of a person, but there are a few things that keep me up at night, and failures in my priesthood keep me up at night. I say this not for my benefit, but for your benefit, so that you properly understand and have the proper disposition before the glorious and holy priesthood. It is the Orthodox Christian's honor and glory to know that within this church, the priesthood that was first given to the apostles continues on to this day in her clergy. If the priesthood is glorious because it is really Christ's, then this is also true of the church temple. The church temple is glorious because it is first and foremost Christ's home. And so, as promised, as we wrap up today this 3-part series on the priesthood, in the coming weeks we will talk about the glory of the temple and the divine liturgy, and what that means for our behavior in the church and how we ought to live as Orthodox Christians within this glorious temple. As I've said the past 2 weeks, and I'll say again, believe me, I pray for you. And if nothing else, rereading St. John Chrysostom's book on the priesthood has filled me with a lot of fear and a lot of dread. Also a lot of inspiration, indeed. But that inspiration is surrounded by a great deal of dread. And so I ask you to fervently pray for me and pray for all priests who so need your prayers to continue this dangerous, horrible, and beautiful and glorious ministry. So again, please pray for me as I pray for you. Christ is risen.